This video came up on my homepage, and I thought I'd watch it. It's about getting into maths at Oxbridge from R2 Drew 2. It's got 11,500 subscribers, a few more than I have. So in fact, let me give him one more, and maybe if you're watching this, you can give me one more as well. I'd be interested to know what this person has to say. I've seen his videos, a couple of them before. He makes lots of problems on TMUA, UKMT, that sort of stuff. And me, now having been a math student at the University of Oxford and now working full time as a mathematics tutor, helping students get into Oxford and Cambridge, I feel that I definitely have some interesting thoughts on this video. This year, I helped 12 of my 13 students secure offers from Oxford and Cambridge, and I'm looking to help more in the future. So I do think I'm in a good position to say, yeah, I can know, I know the techniques and tricks and tips that are required to helping you get into Oxford and Cambridge to study maths. But I'm curious to hear what this person has to say. I'm sure he's got lots of things of value. But if you are new to the channel, do consider subscribing. This is a very different.
So I want to talk a little bit.
Didn't mean to press play there. I don't really make videos like this before. Never made a reaction video, in fact, so no idea how this will work. But let's see what this person has to say. I'm going to stop waffling
about getting into maths at Oxford or Cambridge, so doing a maths degree. Mostly only maths, because that's the only thing I'm going to discuss. I will briefly discuss some other universities, but not really. These are the three routes, so Oxford, then Cambridge, then other places. So Oxford's, you do the math paper, October year 13, interviews are shortly afterwards. Interviews are maths focused. You will not be asked, give us a time when you overcame challenge.
They don't care about that.
Questions,
just
maths questions. And then the offer will be A-levels. Cambridge will be TMUA paper, which is kind of similar to the math. I'll talk about specifics a bit later. Interviews the same, and then offer will involve A-levels and the step 2 and 3 papers. And then a load of other places also use the TMUA. Doesn't seem like many use the math paper anymore. It seems to be mostly TMUA. Occasionally they'll interview, but not really very often. And then you just get offers. Occasionally you might be given a step offer, but again, pretty unusual.
Pretty good summary.
Okay, none of the specifics of any of this is what I really want to focus on today, because if you want specifics, it's not hard to find specifics on any of these things. What I really wanted to focus on was, in a more general sense, how can you raise the probability of success at any of these routes as high as possible, right? How can you do that, regardless of specific knowledge of any of these things? And the main bullet point that's going to come up here is probably something that people are going to predict that I'm going to write down. And what's going to happen is a lot of people are immediately going to start skipping forward ahead of the video, because they're like, oh, well, I already know that. Obviously, give me some real tips. This is the real tip. Please don't skip ahead. This is the real tip. This is the only tip.
I'm going to predict what he's going to say. Doing lots of work, obviously. That is so important. So underrated. If I was to be able to give one tip, which I think is what he's doing by framing the video like this, like first bullet point, do a ton of work. There's no magic formula to getting into Oxford or Cambridge. You have to put in the work. The deadline each year is around October 15th. If you decide on October 14th you want to apply, you can apply, but you won't get in. You have to put in the hours. There's no short way of saying that. You have to put in the hours of maths. Now, for me, when I applied to Oxford, I realized probably maybe year 12-ish that I really enjoyed maths. I'd always been good at it, but it was only then when I was like, you know what, maybe I have potential to do this. And what I realized is I ended up really enjoying maths. So I started learning things outside of school in terms of maths. I watch YouTube videos on maths, read things, all these sorts of things. And I go, oh, these tools that I've learned in school are pretty cool. Let me learn some more about it. How do I use this concept in school to help me solve this problem? And that's how I got really into maths. So I don't think you have to necessarily see it as work, or see it as like a burden. It's definitely not a burden. It's not like, I've got to do my 2 hours of maths today. But like, if you have a Duolingo streak that you got to keep up and you're like, oh gosh, I've got to do that again. You shouldn't see it like that, but hopefully you do enough work so that you fall in love with the subject. That was the case with me, at least. Anyway, let's see what he has to say.
There are lots of other videos, maybe on TikTok or wherever, that are going to be like, oh, before a maths exam, make sure you get a really good night's sleep, or make sure you've drunk lots of water so you're hydrated, and make sure that you've organized your full day so that you get there wherever this exam is in plenty of time so you're not stressed. None of that is going to make any difference. Listen to me very carefully. None of that is going to make any difference at all.
I slightly disagree. I'm sure it does give a bit of difference, but it's negligible compared to everything else. Definitely, you do want to have a good night's sleep before the mat exam, but he is right. If that's the thing you're relying on to get an offer, you may as well just wave that goodbye.
That's like turning. That's like it's like drinking smoothies with chia seeds in them for a month and then turning up to a bodybuilding competition. Completely pointless.
Nice
Everyone
analogy.
can see that's completely pointless. Those dudes look the way they do because they lived in a gym for the last 10 years. The people who are successful at these things are successful because they did an absolute ton of maths. This is the only thing that matters. Now, if you want to come to me for specific advice, and this is kind of what the rest of the video is going to be on, about what exactly that work entails, how to use your time effectively to do this work, then that's great. That's what I'll talk about. But the video will be talking exclusively about this bullet point, nothing else. I will just be detailing how to make the most effective use of this bullet point you can. Because the only way to be successful here is to do a ton of work. And I'm talking, by the way, maybe I should have said this to start. I'm talking to people as young as in year like 10, maybe. All the way from 10 to, I guess, currently 12, because it's too late for people in year 13, obviously. But this is a lot.
I'd say go even like younger than year 10. So year 10, for those of you who aren't from the UK, is like when you're around 15 years old, 14, 15 years old. Again, I'm not thinking of this as work. I'm thinking of this as discovery, enjoyment, right? Maths is not this thing which you got to think of as, oh, I've got to learn it in school. I've got to read this textbook, blah, 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 learning Pythagoras' theorem. Uh, think of it as problem solving. Right? In the UK, at least, there are so many resources. And I know there's the same in like in America and in lots of other countries. You've got all these competitions. So in the UK, we have this thing called the UKMT, the UK Mathematics Trust, and they have these challenges for different age students, and it starts from like a junior level, which I believe is like for year 7, so like 10, 11 year olds. And these problems, obviously, they're designed for those students of that age, but they are still extremely interesting, even as someone now going, okay, well, how would I answer that as someone in year 7 who has very limited mathematical tools compared to what I have now? So, again, don't see it as work, see it as discovery. It's almost like a game. Like math is about this big area of discovery and lots of things to learn. If you enjoy that sort of stuff, then do it. I mean, if you don't enjoy it, then don't do it, right? Like, the fact you're watching this video, you probably are interested in maths, I imagine. So you probably do want to learn some more maths, learn some interesting things, whatever. And maybe you're even considering applying to Oxford and Cambridge. Go out and learn stuff. Go out and you really want to actually study maths. Don't want to apply to Oxford and Cambridge just because it's Oxford and Cambridge, right? Apply because you really, really enjoy maths. Yeah.
Long process of doing a long amount of work. And that's just
But yeah,
what it
there's no
is.
earliest
You know,
point, I would say.
and I really need to put this point through to a lot of people, I think, because there are a lot of people who apply to Oxford Cambridge to maths who've never found GCSE or A-level maths or even further maths difficult, who are the best mathematicians in their school. And I think there's a lot of people who sort of think that, applying to Oxford or Cambridge is just the natural next step because they're the best in their school. They deserve it. It's just the natural next step. It's their God-given right to apply to Cambridge or Oxford and to get in. And I've even had teachers come to me. I've taught lots of very successful mathematicians at A-level who have done very well. And they haven't got into Oxford or Cambridge. And other teachers have come up to me and be like, why did so-and-so not get into Cambridge? Like, they're the best in the year group. They're the best in the school at maths. Well, how did they not get in? What chance does everyone else have if they couldn't? And it's such a stupid point.
I agree.
Because the number of people who are the best at maths in their school, full marks for working this out, is the same as the number of schools in the world. And again, full marks for working out this next step too. The number of schools in the world far exceeds the number of maths places in any given year to Oxford or Cambridge, right? So being the best in your school, being someone who's never found GCSE or A-level maths difficult means absolutely nothing.
To build on that, yeah, so Oxford and Cambridge roughly have 200 to 250 spaces for maths each. So let's just say 500, round up. You are competing for 500 spaces, right? Maybe you don't know 500 people, well, full stop, but maybe there's not 500 people in your school. So you think, okay, this is my competition, the people in your school. But no, it's not even your city, not even your country. It's literally the whole globe. There's probably, I mean, maybe I don't know this for sure, but I'm sure this is probably a fact. that they get applications from every single country in the world, or certainly 95% of countries, both Oxford and Cambridge, because everyone knows Oxford and Cambridge. You've got to be the top 500 of those students to get in. Anyway,
Nothing. Nothing at all. It is completely a worthless flex, right? They cannot take everybody who just happened to be the best in their school or just happens to not find maths at school very difficult. Because guess what? There is an absolute ton of people
I
like
like
that.
this video so far.
So
It's pretty
please,
hard
can we
truth stuff,
immediately get it
which
out
I
of
think
our
is
heads?
sorry. I think what he's saying so far is pretty useful. I think he's taking a very different approach on it, which I like. It's a little bit more firm than you get most of these videos saying. So I'm enjoying it so far because as someone who has been through the process and also seen people like when I was applying, my friends in school, I was the only one to get an offer from Oxford. I'd see these people go through it, and I also did it. I knew what the work that I put in, and I felt that I deserved it in the end. I now tutor students as well to help them getting into Oxford and Cambridge. And you see that sort of same thing. You've really got to push them. You've really got to want it. Really, um, yeah. It's not enough to just be good at maths in school. Like without sounding too pretentious, anyone it costs you get them a dime a dozen. You get so many students who are the best in maths in their school. So that's not enough. If you think that is enough, yeah, as he says, forget it.
That you have any chance of success at any of this just because that previous fact is true, right? You have to do this point. And the other thing that I'll say is there's lots of, amongst, I don't know why I said that sentence because there's lots of things I'm about to say, but there's lots of people around the world who, and I do mean the world because this is Oxford Cambridge, who
Yeah.
are just as talented or more talented than you are, right? And they are going to do a ton of work, which means if you're going to have any chance, you have to match them. You kind of just have to match them. If you don't, you just immediately throw in the towel and you're going to get nowhere. You just have to do a ton of this stuff, right? And if you're sitting there kind of scowling at me, going, well, I don't really want to do that. There
Scale.
must be some other shortcuts. If that's your frame of mind, if that's your perspective on this, firstly, commiserations for not getting into Oxford or Cambridge because you won't. But also, even if by some miracle you do, you're going to hate it here, right?
Very valid point. I think that's a point that's not really spoken about enough. People, when you haven't applied to, or when you're in the run up, you're in year 13, year 12, whatever, you're thinking about applying to Oxford and Cambridge. You think of it because everyone chats about Oxford and Cambridge. It's the best universities in the UK, arguably in the world. Great. But that's like just the face of it, right? Once you step through the doors, you've got lots and lots of tutorials, lectures, lots of hours to spend on this much more challenging mathematics than at other universities, and that, to be honest, is true. If you look at a problem set from a different university that isn't Oxford and Cambridge, even like another Russell Group university, there's a clear difference. Same with the exams, same with the kind of just the level of teaching. Right, that is why they're put on a pedestal. Um, they are very, very good universities. There's a reason for it. Um, but yeah, if you don't want to be pushed, you don't want that challenge. Oxford and Cambridge aren't for you. Although yes, you get to put that fancy label on your CV, you're going to have to put through 3 or 4 years of extremely hard work, and it's whether you want that or not.
This is going to do maths at these places is committing to 4 years or more of
Yep.
your full-time job being maths. So if you're scowling at the prospect of throughout year 12 and 13 doing some extra maths or even doing a ton of extra maths, if that's not an appealing prospect to you, then please give up on your dream of Oxford Cambridge now, because I'm telling you, you are going to hate your dream. You're going to hate it, and that's fine, right? We're all allowed to have dreams that actually won for us, right? If your dream is to get into Oxford or Cambridge, but you don't like the thought of doing lots of maths, that's not the dream for you. Choose another one, and that's fine, right? That's completely fine. Just choose another one and move on. And even better than that, I guess, if you're kind of G'd up by this pep talk, I guess, if that's what this is, and you think, well, okay, yeah, I'm going to go do a ton of maths now, I'm going to go in and do it. And in 3 weeks' time, you just feel completely burnt out. You're hating the whole experience. That's also fantastic because it means that this wasn't for you either. And now you can think of something else to do. The worst.
I think maybe I do disagree slightly on that. I mean, there have definitely been times in my 10 years or so of really having maths be my thing, my main thing. There have been lots of times where I've been like, oh, why? What's the point? Certainly at university, I had that a lot where I couldn't wrap my head around a theorem, or it just became a lot of things to study, and I was like, oh, why am I doing it? And I guess that's not really what he's talking about. He's talking about year 12, year 13. But I still kind of say the same words there. Like if you're preparing for, let's say, the step paper or the mat paper, the first times you see it, it looks impossible. If you look at any of these advanced maths, so like if you're in A level, if I haven't seen a further maths paper before and I look at it, I'll be like, what on earth is this weird integral symbol? And I wouldn't even know it's an integral symbol. It can be really intimidating. And even if you do know all the symbols and you've done the A level forms and you look at a step paper and you go, I have no idea. And it's because it's a very different flavor of maths. So maybe the burnout is, I'm interpreting it slightly differently. But just because you can't solve a problem or the speed changes or whatever, I don't think that should be a deterrent. I think that should be maybe, hopefully, just I guess poke your curiosity. But like, well, why am I finding this so challenging? I find A level maths a walk in the park. Why can't I solve this problem? But that being said, of course, maths is not for everyone. I'm not here to say that maths is for everyone. Everyone should do maths. Everyone should apply to Oxford and Cambridge. That's not what I'm here for. But I think it's not so much just to say that you know if you get stuck, give up, because otherwise a lot of us would have given up.
Case scenario is when you don't do a ton of work, when you have this dream of going to Oxford or Cambridge, then you don't do a ton of work for it, and then either you get accepted and end up hating your degree, or you don't get accepted, in which case you then need to come up with a new dream on the fly. At the end of year 13, when there's no time for any of that because you've got to do something with your life and you finish school. The best case scenario is that you do this now, and then best case scenario, you really like doing it, and then you have a good chance of getting into one of these places. Or you don't like doing it, and you can't commit to it, in which case you find something else to do in your life. Right? That's the aim. So I hope that I've made that point nice.
I wouldn't say it's the be all and end all, but it is what most people end up doing, going to university and studying a subject. But I'm actually low key kind of an advocate of there are lots more options out there. Even as someone who went to Oxford and Cambridge now, and my job is about helping students get to university. I tutor students getting into Oxford and Cambridge. I still wouldn't ever want any of my students to think that that is what they have to do. It is purely because that's what they want to do. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed my time at Oxford, and I'm sure lots of people enjoy their time studying. Not even if they don't end up at Oxford or Cambridge, they enjoy their time studying at university, and it is worth their while. But I don't think it should be, the path that is followed, kind of seamlessly, like sheep, just because our parents did it. They applied to university, they studied at university. I think that lots of other options out there. So now I'm, run my own business tutoring students across the globe in mathematics. Of course, yes, maybe, studying at maths at Oxford did help that, but there's loads of other things that you can be doing. Anyway, that's besides the point. It's about students who are looking to get into Oxbridge. Sorry,
and now I guess we
got a
can
bit
finally
political
get
there.
into what it is that we should be doing with our time.
Cool.
Now,
Let's see.
I mentioned before that this video is for people as young as year 10, I guess. If you're in year 10, you obviously can't work on math papers and TMUA papers right now, but you can do lots of problem solving, right? There's UK maths problems out there. There's the Parallel website with a ton of nice problem solving stuff on it, and also a bunch of extra maths on it. You can develop all of these mathematical
so
skills
many resources
with
out
things around the topics you've actually been taught so far, and you can put yourself in a fantastic position when you start sixth form to be ahead of all the other people who are going to start this much later. Because that's the other thing I could mention. I get comments on my YouTube channel all the time of people being like, oh, when should I start preparing for the TMUA? And other comments reply going, oh, you'll be fine if you just start a few months in advance, maybe the summer of year 13. And again, sorry to call out these people. Such a stupid comment. The goal here,
100%
let's rephrase the goal here. The goal here isn't to get into Oxford or Cambridge. The goal here is to be as good at maths as you possibly can be. Getting into Oxford or Cambridge is just going to be a symptom of the.
I very much agree. And maybe he's about to say this. I'm sorry for pausing so much, but yeah, is Oxford and Cambridge is almost like the metric that we use to. And I'm not saying it's a good metric, but it's almost the metric we use to say, "Oh, am I good at maths?" So if you're in year 13 and you want to study maths at university, almost, the universities you apply to and the ones you get offers from, that's almost like a metric of how good you are at maths. But not really. Math is a mixture of two things: being good at it, but also really loving it. And so, if you don't have both of those two things, as I'm sure he's about to say, Oxford and Cambridge aren't for you. Um, yeah,
Fact, you succeeded in your goal. But the goal should be as getting as good at maths, being as good
exactly.
a
Yeah,
mathematician as you possibly can be. And if your goal is to be as good as you possibly can be, why are you putting a time frame on the idea of just preparing for TMUA a few months in advance? Why are you not doing it for years? And I know that sounds like as if I'm sitting in a high castle somewhere preaching this down, but that's just the way it is, right? Like our goal here should be.
yeah, I agree. There's no time frame. So yeah, even like he said earlier, year 10, I think start when you want. If you enjoy maths, if you're watching this right now and you're in year 7 or even younger maybe, and you enjoy maths, go out and pursue it. You have so many resources. You have Chat GPT. You have the internet. You have books. You have teachers. You have, if you're that young, probably people who you know that are older than you, siblings or whatever relatives. They can point you in the right direction. Go out and explore. I think that's one thing that maybe time is finite, right? Like, and if you're year 11, let's say, you might go, oh, I'll wait till the summer, whatever, and then summer goes by quickly, and you're like, year 12, I need to catch up. I'll wait till the Christmas break, and all of a sudden, then you're applying to Oxford, and you're like, oh, whoops. Start if you enjoy it, explore it. Like, not for the sake of applying to Oxford and Cambridge, but for the sake of, I enjoy this. If you enjoy baking, right, you're not going to wait for someone to come along and say, "Oh, can you make me a cake?" You're going to be making cakes all the time just because you like it. Same with maths, right? If you enjoy solving problems, don't do it with the target being Oxford and Cambridge, because you enjoy it.
To be as good mathematicians as we possibly be. So therefore, we should start doing maths as early as we possibly can through these things. Of course, when you're in year 12, you can start looking at past papers for maths and TMUA. There's plenty of them. I'll talk about them more in a second. And you can also start doing interview practice because of what you've got an interview to do. But the goal is to be as good at maths as you can possibly be. And there's no start point for that. Or there's no when should
Just
I.
also a very random comment. I also like how this is such a simple presentation. I don't mean that in like a patronizing way. I mean it genuinely. Like the fact that this is just like some bullet points he's typed up on PowerPoint, I think almost emphasizes how simple it is to get into Oxford and Cambridge. You have to do a ton of work. Literally in black and white in front of us on the screen. That's how you get into Oxford and Cambridge. Anyway,
I start doing that. It's just do it now, right? That's when you should do it. Do it now. Do a ton of it. If you don't like it, then great. Go find something else to do with your life. Fine. It's not that complicated. The only other thing I'll say here is, in terms of general tips, is the non-calc skills. Again, if you're someone who particularly is doing sixth form maths and you have your calculator by your side all the time, you're typing stuff all the time, please stop doing that.
I'm not gonna lie, that is my pet peeve as a maths tutor, is when I see students getting their calculator to work out sine of 30 degrees. I was like, well, it's not that you should memorize it, you should understand all these things that your calculator can do. Your calculator should just be for the kind of calculations where, okay, in theory you could do it, but you can't, or like things like sine and cosine and of like these weird angles. I don't know. I've got lots of thoughts about that, but that's something that annoys me: is students who
allows you to use a
rely
calculator.
solely on a calculator for problems that don't, like quadratics. When it factorizes, they'll use a formula. Anyway, sorry, that's a little bit rant
So
from
you
me.
do need to be very good without one, and it has let people down in the past. People who weren't kind of fundamentally aware of that. Anyway, should we talk about something specifically for Oxford and Cambridge then? Because that's probably what will click this video, assuming
Big
that
up Oxford.
only to then go
Let's
into a
go.
massive rant about how you just
Come
need to do
on.
some work. But if we're going to talk specifics for Oxford, the math paper is largely or almost entirely year 12 maths, which means that, guess what I'm going to say here? I'm obviously going to say you should do basically every math past paper. I don't really think there's much excuse for not just doing every single one, because you can
Pretty
start
obvious.
all the way through year 12, right? Because as soon as you finish a year 12 topic, like say differentiation, you can just start tackling differentiation questions from the math paper, because you must have done all of that, because there's no year 13 differentiation in it. And if you do it that way, where you're just doing, you finish the differentiation chapter, you open up all the math papers, do all the differentiation questions, then you can cover all the math papers throughout all of year 12. You don't just have to sit down, in between 12 and 13 and in the first part of year 13 doing all the past papers in one go. You can just do what.
I agree, and I'm not sure maybe he says this now, but I'd say add the intermediate step of. So he's given the example of different. I'm going to use a different example. Let's say um, circles, like coordinate geometry. Let's say you've just learned that in year 12. I would say, firstly, become an absolute boss at the A level questions on that topic. So be able to do every single A level question almost with your eyes closed. So, because to be honest, A level maths, you get lots of repetition in years in terms of the type of question. They'll be quite similar, maybe some different numbers. There'll be only almost like a bounded number of techniques that you can apply to those sorts of problems. And whereas with the mat and step, there's almost an unbounded number of different techniques that you could see. So make sure you're happy with the kind of core questions, and that will give you a good foundation. I think if you try and dive right into the deep end of solving these tricky questions, you could maybe be turned off, but also then you lose the opportunity to do them for the first time. So almost when you see a question for the first time, especially if it's a very difficult one, I was kind of guilty of this myself. If I'm honest, back in year 12, I'd go, I'll just look at the solutions. And the moment you look at the solutions, you lose yourself that kind of um, satisfaction of coming up with the solution yourself, or even if you don't get to the solution, the satisfaction of knowing that you have, you know, toyed with that problem for so long. I'm pretty sure there were times where I'd spent more than a week just trying to solve one step problem. Because I got into this mentality of, okay, I'm going to try and not look at the solutions, and I spent all day trying to think about this particular part for several days, and then I caved. But now I still remember that solution, you know, very very well. It will help you remember it. Um, so that's one thing I just add in there. So definitely do the questions from Matt. Do them as soon as you can, but make sure you are absolutely the best of the best when it comes to those core A level questions. So that intermediate step,
For the questions throughout the year in year 12. Um,
which also is
here's
really
where I have
easy
not.
to do. Just do like the mixed exercise questions in the textbook, or there's like a million resources online. Look at do the A level past papers and just scroll through until you get the coordinate geometry questions.
Well,
Millions of
which is
resources,
fantastic.
free
I would suggest
resources
that you
out
watch
there.
it because I think it's really good. And then the
Yeah, big
opera
shout
for A
out
levels, I would
James
say,
Monroe's online maths lab. I
yeah,
haven't watched all of the series, but I've seen like clips of it, and occasionally comes up on my YouTube and I go, I'll watch this. He does an amazing job at explaining maths really, really well, also in a very positive manner, very friendly face. Saw him about a few times at Oxford, so I can only speak good things about it.
is kind of interesting. You do need to get the year levels. You just need to get them. You can't mess up your grade. You can't. Whatever other subjects you're doing aside from maths and further maths, you do need to get them grade there. I will mention interviews here as well because I don't think I mentioned them very much earlier. They're maths questions. The best way to prepare for interviews is just do a bunch of interview questions. I mean, yeah, of course I was going to say that. It doesn't really matter if you don't have a maths teacher who's good enough at maths to do an interview with you, because there are plenty of YouTube videos that demonstrate what an interview should
I've
look
got a
like,
few.
and you can just copy the people in those videos.
Link in the
When you're
description
doing a
below.
maths interview question at home on your own, you can sort of, if you're alone in your room, you can just say the whole thing out loud, right? You can imagine there's an interviewer next to you the whole time, right? You can practice that bit on your own. It doesn't really make a difference if someone's there or not. There are some great YouTube channels that talk about.
I think it does help to have someone to rebound off. Well, I mean, obviously, it's kind of a difficult thing to access, but if you have someone who knows maths very well, and then they can really push you and prod you in the right direction if you're struggling on a problem. But anyway, let me speak.
Or do lots of interview style maths questions. I'm sure you can find those on your own. So yeah, that step I don't think is too hard to prepare for.
Just one small point, I'll just add this in here. In terms of speaking to yourself, a really good thing to do, especially now that they're all online, is getting used to camera skills, getting used to speaking to a camera, maybe also writing using a virtual tablet. They may or may not ask you to do that. So small things like that is definitely things you can just add into your interview prep. And also recording yourself, looking back at the recording afterwards. Are you clear? Maybe give it to someone, a family member or something. Ask them to watch it and go, am I being clear? Are my explanations good? All these sorts of things.
And then yeah, you get the offer. Now Cambridge is slightly trickier. The TMUA paper is kind of equivalent to the math paper, I guess. It's again largely year 12 maths, so the same thing applies where you can just do it throughout year 12. Once you know topics, you just do the questions on that topic. There is a ton of maths in there. It's like about logic and stuff that is not in A-level maths, so you do have to learn all of that. You need to go away outside of your time and learn that stuff, right? doesn't matter how smart you are, you're not going to be able to do TMUA paper 2 unless you've gone away and spent a lot of time reading up on how to do it. Um, and so that's why
Yeah,
they put
very
that stuff
fair.
in there, right? They put that stuff in there to weed out the people who can't be bothered to put the effort in when they're at university, when they're doing their A levels. Because if they can't put the effort in there, then they're not the kind of people who are going to be successful in a degree. Cambridge know that, which is why they put that in. And it's the exact same point I made about 10 minutes ago. So yeah, start this in year 12. For learning this paper 2 stuff, my playlist is good. It seems to be the thing that people find the most useful that's out there.
Can recommend. Yeah, I've seen a few of his videos before explaining some TMUA problems. They popped up. Can agree they're quite good.
I also have tons of extra papers you could do. The TMUA has been going long enough now that there are tons of papers to work on, so you shouldn't have too much problem with any of those. Interviews.
I agree, but annoyingly, I struggle to find similar problems from others papers which are very logic based, like in the paper 2 of TMUA. So if anyone knows of any good resources, let me know. I know lots of people have come up with their own TMUA style papers, but I'm talking about like completely separate papers. So for example, with the Mat long questions, you can use step 1 or step 2 questions to help you prepare for those longer questions. Whereas with the TMUA logic ones, I can't think of anything similar in any other mathsy papers.
Same thing as Oxford, so I don't need to repeat myself there. Now, this is different down here. The offer is A levels, of course, but it's also step 2 and step 3. Now, step is really, really, really hard. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that it's the hardest paper that it's possible for UK school kids to take at any point in school. I think that's probably true. It's incredibly unlikely you have a teacher at school who could help you with any of the step papers because it's incredibly
So yeah, I say step is pretty hard. Yeah.
unlikely that a teacher is going to be good enough at maths to do them. But at the same time, I don't really think that matters because, I have videos for STEM, and I've just suggested that you watch my videos for TMUA. But I almost don't really suggest that you watch my videos for STEP that much because the whole point of STEP is, we have this issue, which is that anyone who's taking STEP seriously, anyone who's watching this video, as I've said before in an earlier part of the video, you guys have not found maths difficult during your time at school, right? And in particular, when you've been doing exams, let's say going back to GCSE, you turned over the GCSE page, saw a non-right angled trig, and just immediately knew what to do. You immediately knew cosine rule. You knew how to write it down. You knew how to get it right. You knew how to type it together with it. You just got the question right. And it might have been a 5-mark question, and you did it in 1.5 minutes, right, at most. And and you finished all your GCSE papers in less than an hour, and you got really high marks in all of them. And that's just how it goes for people who are taking STEP at the end of year 13. The problem with STEP is that it's now that's not how it goes for any of those people anymore, right? That's the problem. Is that STEP gives you at least half an hour on every single question, and every single question you do in STEP, you're almost certainly not going to have any idea how to do at the start. It might help you out with a couple of marks at the start where it tells you kind of what to do, but after that, you're going to be on your own and you're going to have to figure it out. And it is not something that a teacher will have shown you how to do at any point. You're going to have to sit there and figure it out. Andrew Wiles has a really good.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if he's about to say this or not, but it's so different to A level. If I'm tutoring a student for A level maths and they want to know how much more work they've got to put in to be getting an A star comfortably, I tell them keep doing questions, keep doing past paper questions, keep doing. There's an almost an unlimited supply. You can never run out of maths questions to do for A level, and keep doing them until you look at a problem and you know instantaneously from looking at it exactly how you're going to solve it. Obviously, you won't know perhaps the exact numbers until you do the number crunching, but no, okay, right, I need to do logarithms with both sides, then take the derivative, whatever. Great. Or if it's a mechanics question, you go, okay, I need to draw these forces, I need to resolve this way, and then do this, and this. If you can look instantaneously at a question and know exactly how to do it, that is what's going to get you to. And obviously, you're doing all the things to get the full marks, and you can solve these questions super quickly. I also advise to or target students say try and finish the paper in half the time, which sounds like ludicrous. Like you're given so much time for you're not given that much time for an A level paper, and you're given loads and loads of questions. But if you're aiming to finish it in 50% of the time, and you're still scoring high, then the real exam you've got double the amount of time than what you can than what you need, sort of thing. So you have plenty of time. Um, so yeah, I mean, and those targets, don't get me wrong, they're not easy to achieve, but they're very, very clear. Like, do lots of questions, do them quickly. Whereas with the step, you cannot just look at a step question and instantaneously know what to do. You can have a good idea of what to do, but I think even now, me as someone who tutors math problems, as tutors math students, helping them with students with step, even now, if I look at a step problem which I haven't seen before, I haven't seen in a while, and I look at it, I won't know instantaneously what to do. I'll probably have a very good idea of what to do, but I wouldn't be able to wholeheartedly say, yes, this is exactly what needs to be done in order to solve this. Whereas with an A level problem, absolutely I could.
Quote. He's the guy who solved Fermat's theorem, about his experience doing this maths to solve that problem. And his quote was essentially, imagine like 10 pitch black rooms, and his entire job was to go into each room and just lighting them up, right? So he'd walk into a room, pitch black, and he'd have to find the light switch. That was his only job. He'd find the light switch. As soon as he found it, it would be lit up, the room would be lit up, and he'd proceed to the next room. But the problem is that if the room is pitch black, how do you know where the light switch is, right? So he would spend an awful long time feeling around, getting absolutely nowhere in the dark, before eventually finding that light switch, in which case it immediately lights up and he moves on. And that's kind of what solving step problems is like, right? And what solving maths problems is like, which is why he made that analogy, is that you're going to have to do a lot of things in your step paper that are wrong. You're going to have to try a lot of things that are going to get nowhere. And eventually, after a lot of things, you might find the thing that works. And then you can move on. But you've got to practice this idea, because going back to my original point, that is so different to how you've done every maths paper in the past, right? Where you've just known immediately what to do and got it right. You're going to have to get used to this feeling of, okay, I'm doing a question. I have no idea what to do. I'm just going to try stuff. Maybe this works. No, it doesn't. Maybe this works. No, it doesn't. Maybe this works. No, it doesn't. Okay, maybe this works. Oh, it kind of does, but it doesn't really. But maybe if I just change it a little bit, it does work. Oh, it does work. Okay, maybe it works a bit. But now it suddenly doesn't start working. Okay. So now I need to do this other thing that I tried 10 minutes ago that didn't work at the time, but now it works. Like, that's the thought process that you need to go through. And none of you have ever done that. Definitionally, none of you have ever done that. Because, again, the only people taking step are people who did not have to do that at any point during their time in school level maths. Because the only people taking step are very good at maths. So you have to just do, bringing back to my previous point, you have to just do a ton of questions. A ton of them. You have to get so used to that idea, so patient with yourself and with your maths, to be able to
100%.
just sit there making so little progress until you eventually do. And that is,
yeah, and I can't remember if I mentioned this earlier or not, but yeah, the momentum shift. You can do an A level problem. A great student can do an A level problem in 2 minutes. Hardest A level problem out there. You give it to me without sounding too pretentious. I can do it in a few minutes. A step problem, no one can do in a few minutes, and that's not because there's lots and lots of writing involved. It's because it requires thinking. And A level, you're not. They don't. The course is not designed to get you to think. The course is designed to get you to do. So you see a differential equation, they give you the steps of how to solve it. But the moment you throw a spanner in the works, they don't teach you about how to deal with that. And that's kind of maybe a discussion for a different day. But proper maths, so Oxford, Cambridge, these step maths papers, these maths papers, not A level, they kind of encourage you to ask, well, what happens if there's a spanner in the works? And you've got to kind of get used to that. That's what steps about. You've got all these step problems. You've got part one, part two, part three. Part one will normally be relatively straightforward. And then part two, they might throw a small spanner in the works. Part three, throw a different spanner in the works. And then in the final part, it's like, well, what if this wasn't the problem overall? Then we change this initial concept, whatever. What if we do something different? I mean, I can talk all day about step problems. Let's say what he has to say.
It's just a case of just sitting there and doing it, right? And if you're not going to manage that, then you're not going to be able to do the step because they're already hard. Okay, well, that seems like a quick end to this video, but I think that was all the things on my list to say. I've got my list in front of me on a piece of paper, and I can't think of anything else that I was going to say. So, cool. That's how you get into Oxford or Cambridge to do maths at university. I guess thanks for watching.
I need to talk to you.
Cool. Very good video, I think. Very straight to the point. I think one of the things that I think was quite cool there is that he got straight to the point, made it clear that to get into Oxford or Cambridge, you've got to put in the work. There's no magic formula, no magic wand you can wave. There's nothing you can do that's gonna make it easy to get in. You've got to put in the work. But that doesn't have to be a burden. That does not have to be something which you dread, something that you don't want to do. And if it is, then yeah, as he says, maybe maths isn't for you, or maybe maths at Oxford and Cambridge isn't for you. But you got to put in the work. He explained the kind of process. If you've not seen that before, that hopefully kind of it clarifies roughly the outline. But in terms of getting in, if I was to give you one tip, it would be do maths, do lots and lots of maths, and that tip actually does help just in general for A level as well. Do lots of maths problems, but with university maths, which is what I enjoy a lot more, and more just like this application to university to study maths, is there's a lot more freedom. You don't have to study just what's in the textbook, whereas with A levels you do. There's so much out there, so go and explore, go and find this maths that you find interesting, and a lot of the ways you can do that is from doing maths problems or watching videos. So when I was year 11, year 12, I'd watch a bunch of maths videos. So shout out Black Pen, Red Pen, Number File, and plenty of others who made amazing videos, which I would go home and watch and go, that's interesting. Click another. That's interesting. And never was there in my mind this idea of going to Oxford or Cambridge. So I think, don't get me wrong, it's good to have Oxford and Cambridge as a motivating factor, but I don't think that should be the reason to apply, which might sound a bit weird. I do not think that it should be the reason. You shouldn't apply to Oxford and Cambridge because it's Oxford and Cambridge. You should apply because of the subject. Um, the way I describe it is, or the one way that I like to think about it is, if let's say for whatever reason you want to apply to Oxford and whatever, just maybe go through this thought exercise. What if you accidentally didn't click Oxford on the application? Of course, you'd be a little bit down, but would you really be that disappointed? If the answer to that is yes, then probably Oxford is not for you. If it's like, oh, I didn't click Oxford, but I did click Imperial, and I know that they have a really good maths course, so I still enjoy studying maths. If you that's your mindset, then absolutely go for it. You must love maths. You must really enjoy it. And I think it's kind of one of the points he hit on earlier was with maths, you really want to make sure you enjoy it, because if you don't, great, you can imagine there was some magic one to get you into Oxford. You're going to hate it. It is difficult. I'm not going to play it out as if Oxford is you get in and you got a certificate. But equally, I'm not going to play it out as if you get in and then everything is incredibly impossible. Of course, people survive. People do the degree, but it is challenging, and in fact, that's what makes it fun. If you're pushed to your very limits in terms of your knowledge and stuff, that's what I wanted. I knew I wanted that, and that's kind of the reason I applied to Oxford, amongst other things. Um, yeah. Anyway, interesting video. I'll be interested to see if he does more videos like this where it's not solving math and talking. And also, if you like this, me reacting to math stuff, I've never done it before. I had to actually watch a YouTube video on how to make videos to react to. Let me know in the comments down below. I'm super close to 10,000 subscribers. If that means anything. No, 100,000 does. That means I get a plaque, but that's a long way away. But please do subscribe, like if you haven't, and go apply to Oxford and Cambridge.